Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. After being reborn, I placed the divorce agreement in front of Andrew Carter. He didn't even look at it, tossing it aside. The custody of our son? I'm not giving it to you. I don't want custody, I replied calmly. Andrew raised his eyebrows, clearly puzzled, and finally figured it out. Oh, fine. Take care of this mess yourself. I'm not doing homework no matter what you say. It won't happen. 8-year-old Ethan Carter sprawled on the floor, throwing a tantrum, his expression daring me to try and force him. This had become a daily routine. I told him he had to finish his homework before playing, limited his TV time to 30 minutes, and only allowed him to eat fried chicken and burgers once a week. I set strict rules, hoping to help him develop good habits. But the day Sarah Lee appeared, everything I worked for turned into a joke. Ethan glared at me, accusing. Aunt Sarah never makes me do homework. She only takes me out to play. She also lets me eat drumsticks whenever I want. She says boys need to eat a lot to grow tall. He stared at me with disdain. I don't like you at all. I wish Aunt Sarah could be my mom. In my past life, his words shattered me, but I chose to forgive him. I thought he was just too young to understand. I believed that as he grew older, he would come to see how much I cared for him. I continued pushing him to study hard, exercise, and maintain a healthy diet. When he grew up, he graduated from a prestigious university, founded his own company, and married someone from a well-matched family. At his wedding, when the host asked him to thank his parents, he turned to me in front of all the guests and said, "I hope you can let my dad and Aunt Sarah be together. Aunt Sarah has done so much for our family, she deserves happiness." Below the stage, Sarah Lee cried her heart out, as if all the hardship she had endured over the years had finally paid off. Meanwhile, I stood on stage feeling utterly unnecessary and ridiculous. "Mom, you've been forcing me to do things I didn't want to do since I was a kid. If it weren't for Aunt Sarah quietly giving me warmth and encouragement, I would have been ruined long ago. You and Dad haven't been a real couple for years. Why hold on to this position and make everyone miserable?" I don't remember how I stumbled out of Ethan's wedding in a daze. All I know is that after leaving the hotel, I ran a red light and was hit by a car. That's how I died. But then I was reborn. Looking at my mischievous son throwing another tantrum, I nodded and said, "All right, no homework." Ethan froze, staring at me in disbelief. "Are you serious?" "Of course," I replied calmly. "Then can I keep watching TV?" he asked hesitantly. "Not only can you watch TV, but you can also play on the tablet," I said. "What about eating chips while I play?" Ethan pushed further. "Do as you like." Ethan looked at me in astonishment. "Why are you suddenly being so nice to me?" I smiled faintly but didn't answer. A thankless little wolf like him wasn't worth my genuine care. "Are you scared I'll like Aunt Sarah more than you?" Ethan asked smugly. "I'll give you whatever you want," I said firmly, enunciating each word. "Even your beloved Aunt Sarah?" Indulging Ethan's every whim made him even more unruly. He started playing on the tablet the moment he got home from school, brought it to the dinner table, and even hugged it to sleep. If he stayed up too late and couldn't wake up the next morning, I didn't bother waking him. I let him sleep in and decide whether or not to go to school. I stocked the house with all his favorite snacks. The housekeeper couldn't stand it any longer and kindly tried to warn me. "Ma'am, spoiling Master Ethan like this will ruin him." "How could that be?" I replied sarcastically. "Forcing him to do things he doesn't like, that's what would ruin him." But this lifestyle didn't last long before Ethan's behavior started causing trouble at school. His teacher called me, saying Ethan openly defied his teacher in class, saying, "My parents don't care what I do, so why should you?" I replied coldly, "Sorry, I really can't control him. There's an issue, contact his father." I gave the teacher Andrew's number and hung up before continuing with my spa treatment. When I returned home after my appointment, I found Andrew Carter, who rarely came home, standing in the living room. His expression was dark, and his voice dripped with sarcasm. "Emily, your tactics just keep getting better. Using our son to get me to come back? Brilliant. I did want Andrew Carter to come back, after all. Calling him directly never worked. I couldn't even remember when our relationship had turned so hostile. We had fallen in love freely, gotten married willingly, and supported each other through thick and thin. Together, we had built our company from the ground up. Once the business stabilized, I stepped back to focus on our family, dedicating myself to raising our son and managing the household. I poured so much of my energy into Ethan that I failed to notice something was wrong with Andrew until it was too late. By the time I realized, he was already emotionally cheating with an intern at the company, Sarah Lee. She was 20, young, vibrant, and irresistibly charming. I accidentally stumbled upon their messages. Andrew had written to her, "You remind me of my wife when she was young. Back then, she was just as sweet and lovely as you are." Sarah replied, "And now?" She followed up with a cute, curious emoji. Andrew responded, "Now she's old and dull. Sometimes even being intimate with her feels tiresome." I hadn't expected to see myself in Andrew's eyes in such a humiliating light. That discovery shattered my self-esteem, and I confronted him in a fit of rage. I felt deeply insulted, and I demanded a divorce. Andrew refused. He dismissed his actions, saying he was just joking around with a young girl, and told me not to blow things out of proportion. Both of our families got involved, urging me to reconsider. "Your child is only 2 years old," they said. "Think about Ethan. Don't make such a big deal out of this." Andrew promised he wouldn't contact Sarah again. Even fired her on the spot to prove his loyalty to me. At that time he hadn't physically crossed the line with her, so I chose to forgive him. I even started reflecting on whether I had been too focused on Ethan, neglecting both Andrew and myself. I tried to change to reconnect with him, but just as I began to adjust, Andrew physically cheated. I received photos from Sarah Lee of her in bed with Andrew. It happened on the very night I was at the hospital taking care of Ethan, who was running a high fever. When his fever spiked, I rushed him to the ER and called Andrew, desperately hoping he would come. Instead, Andrew snapped over the phone, "Enough, Emily. I'm just out for business networking. Stop making up excuses to force me home." I stayed at the hospital by myself, worrying over Ethan all night. Then, in the dead of night, Sarah sent me the photos. They were explicit, along with the images she messaged. "Andrew says your dieting makes you look awful. You're not as soft and cute as I am." In that moment, I realized there was no difference between emotional and physical cheating. Cheating was cheating, and Andrew had crossed every line. I filed for divorce again, and this time Andrew didn't refuse. However, he insisted that Ethan's custody would remain with him. At that point, Ethan was my whole world. He was only 3 years old, utterly attached to me. Without me, he would cry all night and refuse to sleep. I couldn't bear to leave him. I considered taking the fight to court to win custody, but I had been out of work for years and stood no chance against Andrew's resources and influence. Our marriage dragged on in this endless tug of war. He refused to relinquish custody, and I refused to give Ethan up. Over time, as Ethan grew older, I found myself resigned to this broken, miserable marriage. Sometimes habits can be terrifying. I hated Andrew's infidelity, yet I spent more than half my life with him. But fate granted me a second chance. I opened the drawer, calmly took out the divorce agreement, and handed it to Andrew. When he saw the papers, he laughed mockingly. "Emily, I thought you finally came to your senses. You've been quiet for so long, and now you're starting this nonsense again. What more do you want?" Andrew Carter demanded. "Is the money I give you every month not enough? If it's not, tell me how much you want." "Half of the company's assets," I replied without hesitation. Andrew's face turned livid. "Are you out of your mind, Emily? Half? Have you gone insane? The company was built by both of us. It's marital property. I spoke to a lawyer, and half of it is rightfully mine." Andrew scoffed impatiently. "And then what? Unless we divorce, it's still marital property." "Well, isn't that what I'm trying to do right now?" I gestured toward the divorce papers in front of him. He sneered, tossing the agreement aside carelessly. "The custody of our son. I won't give it to you." "I don't want it," I said calmly. Andrew's eyebrows shot up, clearly caught off guard. "You finally figured it out? Fine then." He picked up the divorce agreement again, his impatience evident, and started to read through it carefully. Besides what was rightfully mine, I didn't demand a single penny more. I had also willingly given up custody of Ethan to him. Andrew frowned deeply, putting the papers down. Emily, you better not regret this. Giving up custody means you can't see Ethan without my permission. Not once. And let me make this clear. Once this divorce is finalized, there's no going back. Even if it's for Ethan, I won't reconcile with you. Just sign it, I said, not wanting to waste any more time on pointless arguments. If it weren't for the fact that he was so hard to track down, the first thing I'd have done after being reborn would have been to divorce him. Seeing my unwavering attitude, Andrew signed his name with a flourish. Emily, you brought this on yourself. If you hadn't been so insistent, if you had just focused on our years of shared memories and cared for Ethan like I asked, I would have let you remain Mrs. Carter for life. But you never knew how to cherish what you had. Who would want that? I replied indifferently. In my past life, the only reason I stayed in this marriage wasn't for the title of Mrs. Carter. It was purely because of my bond with Ethan. Andrew threw the signed agreement at me. Pack your things and get out of my house. I already have, I said coolly. I had packed my bags long before this conversation, just waiting for the divorce to be finalized. As I turned to go upstairs, Ethan came into view. He had been hiding in a corner, eavesdropping on our conversation. He had just returned from school with Andrew after being sent home to reflect for 2 days by his teacher. Seeing me leave, Ethan hurried after me. Are you really divorcing, Dad? Shouldn't you be happy about it? I said lightly as I carried my suitcase. From now on, no one will control you. You can do whatever you want. Aren't you afraid that after divorcing Dad, no one will want you? Ethan asked bluntly. Who told you that no one would want me? I asked amused. Grandma and Dad said so, he answered matter-of-factly. They said you're not good enough for Dad, and after the divorce, no one will take you in. That's why you don't dare to divorce him. I laughed softly, more at the absurdity of it all than at his words. I had long since seen through Andrew, but I hadn't expected his mother to be the same. She always pretended to be kind, criticizing Andrew in front of me and saying how hard it must have been for me to raise Ethan. But behind my back, she clearly only saw me as a free babysitter for her grandson. None of it mattered anymore. These were all people who would soon have no relevance to my life. Ethan followed up. If you promise not to interfere with me, Dad, or Aunt Sarah anymore, I'll help you plead with Dad so he won't divorce you. That won't be necessary, I said, patting his head gently. Take good care of yourself in the future. After all, his growth would have nothing to do with me anymore. I dragged my 2 large suitcases out of the house without looking back. I moved into a fully furnished apartment near a university, a place I had found ahead of time. I planned to take the graduate school entrance exams and start rebuilding my life. Andrew and I had been college classmates, but I had given up my dreams to support his entrepreneurial ambitions. I gave up my eligibility for graduate school to support Andrew Carter in his entrepreneurial journey. After we succeeded and had our son, I shifted my focus entirely to our family. But deep down, I always regretted not pursuing a master's or doctoral degree. Now that I had been given a second chance, I truly understood that people must live for themselves. No one else will ever fully understand your struggles or sacrifices. The day after I moved out of the villa, I saw a post on Sarah Lee's social media. Back when we first met, it was at the company's anniversary celebration, and Andrew had invited me to attend with him. Sarah complimented my earrings and eagerly asked to add me on social media to get the link to buy them later. She got herself a pair of the same earrings, but they weren't purchased by her. Andrew had given them to her. Today her post read, "My limited imagination couldn't comprehend it, such a huge backyard, and it's used for playing soccer." She attached a photo of the backyard of Andrew's villa. It was clear her intention was to announce to the world that she was now openly with Andrew, no longer a mistress hiding in the shadows. I gave her post a quick like. Trash belongs with trash, I thought, smirking to myself. Moments later, Sarah messaged me directly. "Emily, I hope you don't mind my post. It was Andrew's idea. He said I've endured so much over the years, and it's time to make it up to me." Sarah often tried to provoke me. She'd send photos of her being affectionate with Andrew or post gushing declarations about how much he loved her. Then, right before I could respond, she deleted them in feigned innocence with a message, "Oops, wrong person." In the past, her antics had indeed driven me to the brink of insanity. I'd argue endlessly with Andrew, but it only made things worse. He stopped coming home altogether, and even on Ethan's birthdays, he would take Ethan to celebrate with Sarah instead. Every time Ethan returned, he'd say, "Aunt Sarah is so kind to me. She's gentle and beautiful. I want her to be my mom." Looking back, I still don't understand how I endured it all in my previous life, but the deeper the hurt, the less attachment I felt. Now, I replied to Sarah's message with a smile. "Why would I mind? I even liked your post. Isn't that enough proof? You're just trying to show off to Andrew," I added. Sarah seemed convinced that my divorce with Andrew was nothing more than a tantrum. I didn't want to waste any more energy on her. Just as I was about to block her, she sent another message. "There's something you forgot to pack." Impossible. I had checked meticulously before leaving. She quickly followed up with a photo, a box of condoms. I calmly replied, "Keep them, they've expired." Sarah sent a laughing emoji, then added, "A few years and you still hadn't used them. All Andrew goes through several with me every day. We can't even restock fast enough." Perfect. I don't need trash, but if you like recycling, that's great. Consider it waste management. I remained unflinchingly calm. "Who are you calling trash?" Sarah snapped, furious. I could see her typing furiously, but I blocked her before she could finish. Out of sight, out of mind. With Sarah muted from my life, my social media feed felt much cleaner, free from distractions. I focused all my energy on preparing for my graduate school exams. A month later, I was interrupted by a sudden phone call from Andrew. "Emily, where have you been hiding?" he demanded angrily. "If you don't want to divorce, stop pretending." It was only then that I remembered today was the last day of the mandatory divorce cooling-off period. We were supposed to go to the Civil Affairs office to finalize everything. "I'm on my way," I said, hanging up immediately, not wasting a second. I stepped on the gas and drove straight to the Civil Affairs office. When I arrived, Andrew was standing there, his face twisted into a mocking smile. When we had initially signed the divorce agreement, we'd agreed to meet at 10 a.m. sharp. It was now noon, and the office staff had already left for their lunch break. Andrew sneered. "Emily, back when you begged me to sign the divorce papers, I told you already there's no point regretting it now. What are you trying to pull today? This divorce is happening no matter what." I nodded and replied without hesitation, "Of course. I should thank you, actually. If you hadn't made room for someone else, I wouldn't have realized how good Sarah Lee is at taking care of kids. When you were in charge of Ethan, the house was chaos, but since Sarah came along, Ethan has been as obedient as ever." Andrew smirked, clearly enjoying his own boasting. "Well, congratulations on finding yourself such a capable wife," I said sarcastically. "Still acting tough, huh?" Andrew sneered. "Let's see how long you can keep it up." The moment I received the divorce certificate, I let out a long sigh of relief. I had been genuinely worried that my delay earlier might have tested Andrew's patience, but thankfully he signed without further drama. As soon as I had the certificate, I turned and walked away, unwilling to waste another second on him. "Emily," Andrew called after me loudly as I walked briskly toward my car. "From now on, we have nothing to do with each other. If you regret this, don't even bother." I didn't wait to hear the rest. I drove away without a second thought, determined not to let his voice occupy even a fragment of my mind. After regaining my freedom, I felt more motivated than ever. Aside from studying tirelessly for my graduate school entrance exams, I also started exercising regularly. I refused to let my body deteriorate the way it had in my previous life. Half a year later, after relentless effort, I finally achieved my goal and was accepted into graduate school. During that time, Ethan called me once. His voice was hesitant. "Mom, do you ever think about me?" I answered honestly, "No, I've been really busy. Today's my 9th birthday," he said, sounding slightly dejected. "Happy birthday," I replied with a smile. "Don't you want to spend it with me?" he asked hopefully. Your dad told me I can't see you without his permission. I reminded him calmly. Can't you ask him? Ethan's voice grew agitated. I can't, I said simply. Why do you have to keep fighting with Dad? He asked. He's already said I have important things to do. I interrupted and hung up the phone. That was something I never would have done in the past. Back then, I would cling to the phone, waiting for Ethan to hang up first. See, there's nothing you can't let go of as long as you're disappointed enough. One late night during my graduate studies, I received an unexpected call from Andrew. I hadn't blocked his number, mainly because I assumed he would never have a reason to contact me. For over a year since our divorce, he had been the perfect ex, so absent it was as if he no longer existed. I was half asleep when I answered. Hello. Emily, I'm not giving you another chance. Andrew's icy voice came through the line. Ah. I mumbled, confused. Was he out of his mind? Sarah's pregnant with my child. I'm marrying her, he announced proudly. Congratulations, I replied, more out of politeness than genuine interest, though being woken up at midnight was certainly annoying. Andrew let out a cold laugh before hanging up abruptly. I didn't think much of it until I received their wedding invitation. For a moment, I thought it had been sent to me by mistake, but there it was, my full name printed clearly on the card. Of course, just because they invited me didn't mean I was obligated to attend. I tossed the invitation into the trash without hesitation. On the day of the wedding, Ethan called me. Mom, why aren't you here yet? He asked. Where? I asked, not immediately realizing what he was talking about. Dad and Aunt Sarah's wedding at the hotel, he said, his voice trembling. I never said I was coming, I replied. But Dad sent you an invitation. I even came early to save you a seat. Why won't you come? Ethan's voice cracked on the verge of tears. I felt no emotion as I responded calmly. I have other things to do. Thank you for saving me a seat, but give it to someone else. Is whatever you're doing more important than me? Ethan cried, his voice filled with frustration. I thought for a moment and answered honestly. Yes, it's more important than you. You mean nothing to me anymore, I said bluntly after refusing my son's plea. Not long after, Andrew called. Emily, you're upset about me marrying Sarah, so now you're taking it out on Ethan. How childish can you be? What are you talking about? I asked, confused. Don't play dumb. What did you say to Ethan just now? He's been crying nonstop, Andrew accused. I didn't say anything to him, I explained. Stop lying. You can't handle me marrying Sarah, so you're venting your anger on our son. At that moment, I felt utterly speechless. Just admit it, Andrew pressed, but it's too late now. Regretting it won't change a thing. I wish you and Sarah a happy marriage, I said before hanging up. After ending the call, I blocked Andrew as well. I thought that once he married Sarah, there would be no more intersections between our lives. But less than a month later, Andrew unexpectedly showed up outside the gates of a university. I had just finished work in LA and was leaving campus with my senior colleague, Jason Shin. We were discussing lab data as we walked, only to see Andrew waiting at the entrance with Ethan. How did he even know I was studying here? The moment Andrew saw me, his gaze shifted to Jason beside me. For a split second, I thought I saw anger in his eyes, though it might have been my imagination. Andrew's voice was dripping with sarcasm. Now I see why you don't want your son anymore. Got yourself a new man, huh? And Emily, does he even know you're divorced and have a child? Before I could respond, Jason stepped in. I heard her ex-husband's a total scumbag. Do you know him? I couldn't help but laugh, and Andrew's face darkened instantly. I need to speak with Emily, Andrew said coldly, implying Jason should leave. Jason ignored him and turned to me. Is there a problem here? No, I said with a smile. You can head back. I'll handle this. All right. Call me if you need help. I'll notify campus security. Thanks, I replied, watching Jason leave. Once he was out of sight, Andrew sneered. So reluctant to part, aren't you? I shifted my gaze to him and asked directly. What do you want? Andrew scoffed. Blocking me? Is that supposed to be funny? I don't see the point of keeping people in my contacts when they don't matter anymore, I said calmly. Are you seriously abandoning your son too? Andrew shot back. I glanced at Ethan, who was staring at me with tearful eyes. I smiled faintly. He's the one who doesn't want me. I'm just respecting his choice. I never said I don't want you. Ethan cried. I want to be with you forever. I walked over to Ethan and noticed he'd gained some weight. Smiling, I said, "Didn't you tell me yourself that you wanted Sarah to be your mom? Well, now she is. Shouldn't you be happy?" Ethan's eyes reddened, and he bit his lip, clearly uncomfortable. Andrew finally dropped the pretense. Sarah's pregnant. She's dealing with pregnancy-related mood swings and gets agitated easily. The doctor said she needs a quiet environment, so Ethan has to stay with you for now. I'm very busy, I said, frowning. My lab workload is heavy, and I'm also preparing for my PhD entrance exams. I don't have time to look after him. Andrew's tone turned sharp. Are you serious? Your stupid degree is more important than your son? At your age, what's the point? How much money can you even make with it? Haven't I already given you enough in the settlement to last a lifetime? Stop pretending to be noble. I took a deep breath, trying to remain composed. Andrew, in all the years we were together, did I ever wrong you? What's that supposed to mean? He snapped, his temper flaring. I never did anything to betray you. I dedicated myself to you, to Ethan, and to our family. After we divorced, you insisted on taking custody, and Ethan himself said he preferred Sarah. I let go of everything for you. Now that I'm living my own life, what right do you have to question my choices? When did I say you were wrong? Andrew shot back. Then why are you criticizing me for pursuing my education? Why should I sacrifice for Ethan when you're the one who wanted custody? Why should it always be me making sacrifices? Andrew's expression darkened. Isn't this a critical time for Ethan? Can't you set aside your ambitions for him? Even just a little? I laughed coldly. Why does it always have to be me? When we graduated college, you asked me to give up my graduate studies to start a business with you. When the business succeeded and we had Ethan, you asked me to give up my career to focus on the family. Then after the divorce, I did exactly as you wanted. I said with a hint of irony, sacrificing custody of my son, and now you've started a new family. Don't you care for your son, and expect me to sacrifice myself again to fulfill your happiness? Andrew, don't you think you're being shameless? I never said I didn't want Ethan, Andrew retorted, his voice rising. I only said that while Sarah's pregnant, you could help take care of him temporarily. I'll even double the child support payments. His defensive tone revealed that my words had struck a nerve. He grew increasingly agitated. What if Sarah develops postpartum depression? And if that turns into chronic fatigue syndrome or something worse? There are so many conditions she could face. You can't expect me to handle this alone. Oh, I see, I said with mock sincerity. So there's always a new excuse waiting, isn't there? Sarah's not like that, Andrew snapped. She treats Ethan like her own. Then why is Ethan such a problem for her while she's pregnant? Isn't that contradictory? I countered, my tone laced with sarcasm. Andrew fell silent, his expression hardening. Ethan, standing beside him, suddenly looked up at me, his voice trembling. Mom, do you really not want me anymore? At 10 years old, he was old enough to understand the conversation. I crouched down to meet his gaze and gently replied, of course not. But now that Aunt Sarah is your new mom, I feel reassured. In the past, I had always played the bad guy, enforcing strict rules and pushing him to excel in his studies. Now that I had no expectations of him, I vowed never to speak harshly to him again. But Ethan wasn't satisfied. Mom, stop smiling at me like that. It makes me feel like you don't love me anymore. I stroked his head softly. How could I not love you? I just don't want to force you to do things you don't like anymore. I don't want to ruin your future. Enough. Emily, Andrew interrupted, clearly annoyed by my calm demeanor. His pride was wounded. After all these years, he had never been at a disadvantage in arguments with me. Pulling Ethan by the arm, he prepared to leave, throwing one last threat over his shoulder. If you won't take care of Ethan, I won't beg you anymore. But don't expect him to acknowledge you as his mom again. I shrugged indifferently. That's fine. No matter what I do, he'll grow up loving Aunt Sarah more than me. Why should I waste my energy? As they walked away, I turned my focus back to my life. Each day was exhausting but fulfilling, and I felt a sense of accomplishment I had never known before. Taking care of myself made everything better. Still, peace was occasionally disrupted. One day, after completing a set of lab experiments, I noticed my phone had several missed calls from an unknown number. When I returned the call, it was Andrew on the other end. "Emily, come to the hospital. Ethan's been in an accident and is injured." I hesitated but decided to go. No matter what, Ethan was still my biological son, and my responsibility remained. When I arrived at the hospital and approached the door to Ethan's room, I overheard a heated argument inside. "Andrew, how much longer are you going to keep your son here?" Sarah's shrill voice echoed through the room. "If you don't send him away, I'll end up dying because of him, me and the baby both. I've told you, Ethan doesn't have a problem with you. Why do you keep picking on him? He fell down the stairs and broke his bone. You didn't even care." Andrew yelled back, equally furious. "So you want me to fall down the stairs next? Is that it? Or maybe you're waiting for me to die, so you'll have an excuse to get back together with Emily. Then your perfect little family can reunite." Sarah's voice was full of venom. "Enough. Sarah," Andrew shouted. "Stop being so unreasonable. Ethan needs rest to heal." "Fine. I'll show you what unreasonable looks like." Sarah snapped, her tone turning icy. "Either you get rid of him, or I'll take this baby and jump. Your choice. He's only 10. Where is he supposed to go?" Andrew's voice trembled with anger. "I don't care." Sarah screamed. "I just don't want to see him anymore. If you don't send him away, you'll have 2 lives on your conscience." The room went silent. Moments later, the door burst open and Sarah stormed out, only to stop short when she saw me standing there. Her expression froze, and for a moment, she seemed genuinely caught off guard. I was momentarily stunned when I saw Sarah. Was this really the same young, delicate woman she used to be? Her heavily pregnant figure made her look like an older expectant mother. It had only been 2 years since I last saw her. "Emily, what are you doing here?" Sarah snapped, her temper flaring as though she were ready to explode at anyone she encountered. "I heard Ethan was hospitalized, so I came to check on him," I said calmly. "Are you here to see Ethan or Andrew?" Sarah sneered. "What, are you trying to seduce Andrew while I'm pregnant? Is that it?" Was she insane? Her paranoia didn't surprise me though. Even though I hadn't seen her in 2 years, I had heard from mutual friends about her antics. Apparently, ever since she found out she was having a son, she had turned increasingly erratic anytime there was a remotely attractive female employee at Andrew's company. Sarah would accuse her of seducing Andrew and force her to resign. She wouldn't allow Andrew to attend business dinners, and if he did, she'd storm into the event and cause a scene, costing Andrew multiple major deals. People said Andrew was being driven mad by her behavior back then. I found it amusing. Wasn't Andrew the one who adored her liveliness? Yeah, Andrew suddenly stormed out of the hospital room, roaring at Sarah. His anger was so intense it looked like he might devour her. Sarah, startled by Andrew's rare display of fury, took a step back but quickly regained her composure. She puffed out her chest, clearly emboldened by her pregnancy. "If you ever dare do anything to betray me, I'll end it all," she screamed. "And you'd better deal with your son. If not, I'll take the baby inside me and jump off a building. Your choice. Ethan is only 10, where would he go?" Andrew's voice trembled with rage. "I don't care. I just don't want to see him anymore. If you don't send him away, you'll have 2 lives on your conscience," Sarah declared before storming out. As she exited the room, she ran into me. The moment she saw me, she froze, her expression betraying a flicker of shock. It seemed she hadn't expected me to overhear everything. Andrew, noticing the encounter, asked, "Is this funny to you?" I quickly wiped the small smirk off my face. "What happens between you two has nothing to do with me," I said indifferently. "I'm just here to see Ethan." Andrew didn't respond, and I walked into the room. Ethan lay on the hospital bed, his eyes red and swollen, likely from crying. When he saw me, his eyes lit up, and he called out excitedly, "Mom!" I nodded at him. My tone was obedient as I simply asked about his condition. Ethan explained that after school, he ran into Sarah on the stairs. He claimed she deliberately pushed him. However, Sarah insisted that Ethan had tried to push her down the stairs, saying he didn't want her to have another child to steal his father's affection. She claimed she acted in self-defense and accidentally pushed Ethan. Ethan continued tearfully, admitting, "She's so mean to me, Mom. She was only pretending to be nice before. Ever since she married Dad, she's been hitting me and calling me a wild child. Without a mother, she forces me to eat fried chicken and burgers and says I only deserve junk food." The more he spoke, the harder he cried. I listened, maintaining a calm demeanor. "Ethan," I said gently but firmly, "this is something you need to discuss with your dad or your grandma. I'm not the right person for this. They don't believe me. They only care about the baby. They don't care about me at all, Mom. They don't love me. Please let me come with you." Ethan pleaded, gripping my hand tightly. "I'll be good from now on. I'll listen to you and never say bad things about you again. Please forgive me. I was wrong. I'm sorry." Ethan cried uncontrollably, his fear of abandonment palpable. But I had truly let him go, gently pushing his hand away. I replied, "Ethan, everyone has to live with the choices they make. When you chose Aunt Sarah, I stepped out of your world. I regret it. I was wrong." He cried, his voice breaking. "Then change yourself." "Ethan, don't try to change me," I said firmly. "My life won't change for anyone, especially not for you or Andrew." With that, I walked out of Ethan's hospital room, my expression cold and resolute. Forgiveness was not an option, and it never would be. "Emily, when did you become so heartless?" Andrew stood at the doorway, glaring at me. "Ethan is your biological son. How can you abandon him like this? Don't you feel guilty?" I stopped and turned to him, my tone steady and calm. "First of all, I fulfilled my responsibilities as a mother. I haven't abandoned him. Second, Ethan is also your biological son, and you have custody. It's your job to provide him with a stable living environment. Lastly, our marriage ended because of your infidelity. You have no right to accuse me of failing Ethan. If anyone is to blame, it's you." Andrew's face flushed with embarrassment, and he stood there speechless for a moment. Gathering his courage, he finally asked, "Emily, do you just want me to admit defeat? Is that it?" I frowned in confusion. "What are you talking about?" Andrew's voice grew bitter. "You want me to apologize, to say I regret divorcing you and marrying Sarah? Fine. I'll say it. I was wrong. I shouldn't have let Sarah ruin our relationship. I shouldn't have destroyed our marriage. I shouldn't have divorced you." His tone was remorseful, but there was still an undeniable air of arrogance in his confession. He said, "I'll promise you this. After Sarah gives birth and the law allows, I'll divorce her immediately and remarry you." I stayed silent, utterly stunned by Andrew's words. I couldn't believe the sheer audacity of this man. How shameless he had to be to say such things with such confidence. Andrew continued, "I know you've been single these past 2 years. You've been advancing your education, working out, keeping yourself in shape. All of it just to make me notice, to make me regret what I did. You really think I've been living my life just to impress you?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Emily, we're not young anymore. There's no need to play these games. Just take the opportunity while it's still good. My patience isn't unlimited." Andrew said, clearly trying to sound magnanimous. He didn't even give me a chance to respond before he continued. "I have a large apartment ready. You and Ethan can move there for now. Once I've divorced Sarah, I'll bring you both back to the villa." I didn't say anything, just smiled at him. Andrew's temper flared. "What are you laughing at?" "I'm laughing at how shameless someone can be," I replied. Andrew's face twisted in anger. "Emily, don't push your luck. I'm only giving you this chance because of Ethan." "That's a wonderful opportunity," I said mockingly. "Save it for someone else. I couldn't care less." "Stop being so difficult." Andrew's frustration boiled over. "Do you really think as a divorced, a woman in her 30s with a 10-year-old son, any man would actually want you? They're just playing around. None of them would marry you. And yet, you got remarried." I shot back sarcastically. "Men and women aren't the same," Andrew sneered. "A man can turn over a new leaf, but a woman? That was the root of it all, wasn't it? His belief that as a man, He could do whatever he wanted without consequences was what fueled his arrogance and repeated betrayals during our marriage. You don't need to worry about me, I said coldly. Even if I end up alone for the rest of my life, I would never consider you again. Andrew's face turned red with humiliation, and I left without looking back. I couldn't understand how someone could still hold on to such archaic patriarchal beliefs in this day and age. In my past life, I must have been out of my mind to tolerate him for so long. After that unpleasant encounter, Andrew stopped bothering me. I successfully continued my studies and stayed on at the university to pursue a doctorate, fully immersing myself in the academic world I loved. One day, I reluctantly agreed to attend a college reunion at the insistence of my old roommate. She assured me Andrew wouldn't be there, given all the chaos in his life. During the dinner, one of our classmates couldn't help but gossip. Did you hear Andrew Carter was nearly ruined by his second wife? The classmate glanced at me cautiously and added, Emily, you don't mind us talking about your ex-husband, do you? You said it yourself, he's my ex. Why would I care? I replied with a smile. Reassured, the classmate leaned in conspiratorially. That woman is a real piece of work. She causes trouble everywhere she goes. She forbids Andrew from having attractive female employees at his company and crashes his business dinners to make a scene. She's driven his company to the brink of collapse. Another classmate chimed in, I heard she's trying to kick his eldest son out of the house to make way for her own kid. But that's not even the craziest part, the first classmate said dramatically, making everyone lean in closer. What's crazier than that? Someone asked eagerly. Their newborn son isn't even Andrew's biological child. What? The table erupted in shock. How did they find out? Another classmate pressed. When the baby was born, they ran a blood test. The kid's blood type is O, but Andrew's is AB. It's impossible for him to have an O-type child. Andrew must have been furious. That's like waving a huge green flag right in his face, someone exclaimed, referring to the metaphorical green hat of infidelity. Apparently, he almost killed her. Now they're going through a divorce, and she's planning to extort him for a huge settlement because of the abuse, the first classmate concluded with a shake of their head. Everyone at the table burst into animated discussion, but I just sipped my drink and stayed quiet. Andrew's life was no longer my concern. I listened to the gossip quietly, and I couldn't deny it was somewhat satisfying. My roommate, standing beside me with a mischievous smile, nudged me. Hearing all this gossip, aren't you glad you came? I nodded. It does put me in a good mood. But just as the reunion was about to end, something unexpected happened. Andrew Carter suddenly showed up. After a whole evening of talking about him, seeing him in person made everyone a little uncomfortable. Is it over already? Andrew asked nonchalantly, showing no hint of embarrassment. Yes, it's finished, the class leader replied quickly, visibly flustered. Sorry, I got held up and came late, Andrew said, looking unapologetic. No problem, maybe next time, the class leader said curtly, and to everyone's relief, he didn't suggest prolonging the gathering for Andrew's sake. One by one, our classmates left, and I waited by the roadside for a cab. Since I'd had a few drinks, I'll give you a ride, Andrew said, rolling down his car window. No thanks, I replied, turning him down flatly. Come on, it's on my way, he insisted. Really, no need, I said firmly. Andrew sighed, got out of his car and walked over. Ignoring him, I acted as though he wasn't there. You've probably heard by now about what Sarah did to me, he began, clearly fishing for sympathy. I just heard, I said, not bothering to hide my amusement. It really was funny. I finalized my divorce from Sarah today, Andrew said, his gaze fixed on me. I didn't respond. It wasn't my concern, and I had no interest in it. It's my fault for not showing enough sincerity before, Andrew continued, his tone softening. Honestly, I've regretted it for a long time but couldn't bring myself to ask for forgiveness. I looked at him, finding the situation absurd. And now have you suddenly found the courage, because no one else wants you? Emily, I admit some of my words in the past were out of line, but I never meant to hurt you, Andrew said with a sigh. I just didn't know how to bring you back to me, so I tried reverse psychology. Well, thanks to your little strategy, you've only made me despise you more, I said bluntly. Andrew's face turned red with embarrassment and frustration. Emily, I'm sorry. I truly know I was wrong. I swear I'll never do anything to hurt you again. Let's start over, me, you, and Ethan. We can be a family again. A family? I scoffed. How do you even have the audacity to say that? Come home with me, Andrew said, reaching out to grab my arm, but I smoothly dodged him. He looked awkward but persisted. Ethan's been waiting for us at home. He's missed you these past years and regrets the things he said to you. It's not just him. I regret everything too. Can't you forgive us just this once? No, I said firmly, leaving no room for argument. Emily, why can't you forgive us? Is it not enough that we regret it? Andrew asked, his tone desperate. Why should I forgive you just because you regret it? I countered coldly. What about all the pain I endured? What about the lessons I learned, paid for with years of my life? Andrew seemed confused by my words, but I didn't bother to explain. From the moment we divorced, everything between us was over. Wasting your time coming to me, and don't use Ethan as a bargaining chip. It won't work. In fact, it only makes me find you more annoying because you're disrupting my life. Are you worried I won't truly change? Andrew asked, seemingly trying to empathize. It has nothing to do with me, I replied. I understand your concerns. I'll prove to you that I've changed, Andrew said, as if trying to convince himself. I couldn't have been clearer. I will never reconcile with you, I said, my patience wearing thin. But you've stayed single this whole time, Andrew pressed, convinced that my single status was a sign I was waiting for him to change. I didn't have the energy to argue anymore. Andrew's confidence was exhausting. He truly believed that all he had to do was turn back and I'd still be standing there waiting for him. Let him think what he wants. One day he'll realize I've long since moved on. So far away that he'll never catch up, let alone be worthy of me. 6 months later, a university held its centennial celebration, inviting alumni from all generations to attend. The campus buzzed with excitement, and as one of the university's distinguished graduates, I was invited to give a speech in the grand auditorium. The hall was packed with people, and among them, I spotted Andrew Carter sitting in the crowd. He probably couldn't believe I was standing on such a dazzling stage, giving a speech that carried so much weight behind me. The large screen displayed all of my academic achievements over the years, accomplishments significant enough to earn me a permanent place in the university's century-old Hall of Fame. As my speech concluded, thunderous applause erupted from the audience. I even heard someone shout, "She's amazing." Smiling, I bowed graciously and stepped off the stage. As I strolled through the campus, several students approached me asking for photos and autographs. It took some time to politely decline and disperse the crowd, but once I was free, I saw Andrew Carter standing in front of me with Ethan by his side. Ethan had grown noticeably taller since I last saw him. "Mom," Ethan exclaimed excitedly. "I just watched your speech in the auditorium. I'm so proud of you. Everyone was saying how amazing you are." I gave him a polite smile and nodded. "Thank you," I said softly before turning to leave. "Emily," Andrew called out, his voice tense. I turned to look at him, noticing the rise in his eyes. He seemed unable to reconcile the person standing before him with the image he had of me. The woman who once revolved entirely around him and Ethan. "You were incredible today," he said earnestly. "I never imagined you'd achieve so much in academia. Do you finally realize your place?" I asked, a trace of mockery in my tone. Andrew's face showed a flash of embarrassment, but he quickly composed himself. "I'm not saying this because of your achievements," he said hurriedly. "Even before I knew about them, I've been trying to reconcile with you. I know you've hated me for betraying you." He looked nervous, as though he had finally grasped the widening distance between us. "Emily, I've always cared about you. What I had with Sarah was nothing more than fleeting novelty and a man's shallow vanity. I never intended to divorce you, not even for a second." I didn't interrupt him, though I felt like I was listening to the biggest joke of both this life and the last. "I only fought for custody of Ethan back then, because I knew you couldn't bear to leave him. I thought it would stop you from going through with the divorce. But when you gave up custody, I was backed into a corner and had no choice but to agree. Even after the divorce, I never planned to be with Sarah. I was waiting for you to come back." He hesitated for a moment, then added, "Every time I was with Sarah, I took precautions. I never wanted her to get pregnant. I swear I never wanted that. So I'm supposed to thank you for having the decency to use protection while you cheated on me? I asked coldly. Andrew's face flushed, but he continued. When Sarah told me she was pregnant, I didn't doubt her. I assumed the precautions had failed. I never imagined she would betray me. But when she demanded a formal relationship, I didn't agree right away. Don't you remember that night I called you? If you had told me not to marry her, I wouldn't have done it. But you said nothing, so I married her out of spite. He paused, his voice trembling with emotion. Even on the day of the wedding, I waited for you to show up and stop it. If you had come, I would have chosen you without hesitation. But you didn't. Listening to Andrew's self-serving narrative of love for me only deepened my disdain. After marrying Sarah, she turned my life into a circus. She made me a laughingstock in the business world, and only then did I realize how good I had it with you. How patient and forgiving you were. I wanted to divorce her and be with you again, but I couldn't because she was pregnant. Legally, I couldn't leave her, so I waited, hoping you'd give me another chance. I even thought of using Ethan to change your mind, but you kept rejecting me, and I was terrified I'd lose you forever. Andrew's eyes turned red as he spoke, his voice filled with despair. I found it laughable. Back then, I didn't sense even a shred of this fear he now claimed to have felt. Instead, he had stood tall and arrogant before me, utterly indifferent. When Sarah finally gave birth, we discovered the child wasn't mine. I was furious, but honestly, I also felt a wave of relief. Andrew's words hung in the air, but all I could feel was how absurd it all sounded. I can finally divorce Sarah and be with you, Andrew said, looking at me with anticipation in his eyes. Emily, I'm sorry I made terrible mistakes in the past. From now on, if I ever hurt you again, I'll break my own legs. Ethan, standing beside him, quickly chimed in. Mom, I promise to always listen to you from now on and never hurt you again. Please don't stop loving me. I looked at them, their earnestness, their regret, their hope, and their anticipation. Yet, I felt nothing. Rue, seeing my lack of reaction, spoke again. Emily, please come back to us. Let us make up for the pain we caused you. That won't be necessary, I said, shaking my head. I've already healed from those wounds on my own. I don't need you and I don't want you. Emily, Andrew began, but I interrupted him. Don't you realize by now that you're no longer worthy of me? I said, my tone cutting through his delusions. Andrew hurried to declare, Emily, I love you for who you are, whether it's the old you or the current you, no matter how successful you are or not. Then why should I, someone who has become so successful, lower myself to pick up trash? I asked, laughing coldly. I gave him no room to save face. His face flushed red. Whether from embarrassment or shame, I didn't care. Yet he still didn't give up. You've been single all this time, haven't you? Emily, he said, clinging to his flawed logic, convinced it was a sign I was waiting for him. I smiled faintly, then shifted my gaze to the side where Jason Chun was approaching. Without hesitation, he wrapped his arm around my waist as if he'd been waiting for this moment to perform his role. Jason greeted Andrew and Ethan with a bright smile. Hello, ex-husband and eldest son. Andrew's eyes fixated on Jason's hand around my waist, his expression darkening. Emily, are you seriously picking some random guy just to reject me? He's not random, I said firmly, cutting off whatever else Andrew intended to say. I stayed single all these years because I enjoyed being on my own. Now I'm no longer single because I found someone worth starting a new chapter with, someone good enough to deserve a marriage with me. I saw Andrew's face contort as he struggled to accept my words, so I twisted the knife further. Whether I'm single or not has nothing to do with you. It's entirely my choice. And as for you, in my heart, you're nothing more than a stranger. With that, I turned and left with Jason, who wrapped his arm tighter around me as we walked away. Jason glanced back and said casually, by the way, Emily's pregnant with twins. Jason knew exactly how to deliver a final devastating blow. I didn't bother turning around to see Andrew or Ethan's reactions, but as we walked away, I faintly heard Ethan's trembling voice ask Andrew, Dad, is Mom really never coming back to us? Andrew's voice, low and restrained, responded, No, she's not. She gave up on us a long time ago. I was just lying to myself.